These are two very different people, but they have more in common than you think, or at least their jobs do. When you think of the FGC, or the fighting game community for those who use deodorant, you probably don't imagine as much of a crossover between their virtual skills and their physical ones. This isn't unique to fighting games. Nobody is under the false pretense that giving a Valorant player a gun is going to breed some kind of super soldier, or that NBA 2K pro teams have any chance of crossing up Steph Curry. I do think that fighting games are the most extreme example though. The stereotype of the neighborhood dusty ass kid who's just crazy good at Smash doesn't exactly inspire the idea that he's also the next middleweight contender. Again, if you play 2K, at least the premise is the same. The rules are the same, the court is the same, it's still, for the most part, basketball. However, Street Fighter is not fighting. Neither is Mortal Kombat, or Tekken, or MVC. There is little to no overlap. Or is there? I've always been a fan of martial arts and combat sports, but it took me a long time to get into fighting games. I think one of the reasons why is because of that disconnect. When I heard fighting games, I don't really know what I expected, but it wasn't undead ninjas, fireball throwing demons, and an actual fucking bear. I tried a few, but I just wasn't a huge fan. Plus, anybody who's in the FGC knows how frustrating those first few online games can be when you're getting absolutely raw dogged on ranked because you had the gall to jump in without hitting training mode first. Go hit the fucking bag, you scrub. Anyway, although I didn't play fighting games all too much, I did occasionally face off with my friends whenever we'd visit each other, usually at Smash Brothers. So I started watching videos to try and get better, guides on my favourite characters, stuff like that. YouTube did its thing, one rabbit hole led to another. Suddenly, I was a full-blown fan of the Smash 4 competitive scene. I started picking up the lingo, started to learn why some characters were better than others, why some players were better than others. My fascination continued and I dabbled in a little bit of all of the competitive scenes. But I still hadn't really played any fighting games like that. Like I said, I picked up the lingo, but I'd never sat in training mode and figured out what the numbers mean.
The numbers, basically. What do they mean?
Then dropped a little game called Tekken 8. Now, I had always said to myself if there was any fighting game that I'd take seriously, it would probably be Tekken. Because, from an outsider's perspective, it seemed to be the most grounded in terms of the portrayals of each martial art. Little did I know that that was completely bullshit, but it was also notorious for being the most difficult one to pick up. But shit man, Steve was just too damn saucy. So, I sat down, grabbed my controller, grabbed my notebook, and got to work. If you're hoping that I fell in love with fighting games from that point on, cue the montage, started competing in tournaments, became a gold rank and cemented myself as some kind of Tekken god, then you're going to be disappointed. I picked it up, I had some fun, I learned a lot, I dropped it. The whole journey is on my channel if you want to see it live. But more than anything, I was incredibly surprised by just how many skills I learned from real martial arts that seemed to transfer over. Unfortunately, I still have yet to master the Hadouken. My fatalities have been getting a little better, but I think the authorities are starting to catch on, so need to put that one on the back burner as well. Next, I'm going to try uppercutting a fucking bear into orbit. Jokes aside, obviously the physical aspects aren't even in the same realm, but the strategies you see in pro fighting are eerily similar to those used in pro fighting. Now I know that sounds kind of ridiculous, and I'm not saying that putting a fighting game pro player in a ring with no actual fight experience is going to end with anything other than him getting mollywopped, but just hear me out for a second. For example, sometimes blocking hurts in real life. If somebody keeps hitting the same spot, even if you perfectly receive the blow, it can take a toll. Doesn't that sound kind of familiar? So, chip damage is a real thing. Fighters will also often work the body or legs in an attempt to lower their opponent's arms and guard, so they can open them up for devastating headshots. You telling me that doesn't perfectly describe a high-low mix-up? Using moves that overcommit and leave you open to counters are ill-advised, unless you set them up first with smaller, safer shots. My brother in Christ, that's a block string. Start-up frames is telegraphing, zoning is outboxing, footsies is footwork, cancels are fakes, chain grabs are lock transitions, wombo combos are jumping. There are even some fighting game terms that apply to real fighting that I don't even know have a name, like punishing, shield poking. Shit, I saw one guy do a tomahawk. So, I think I've made my point. There is a lot of crossover, at least strategically, between fighting games and real fighting. But one thing I haven't mentioned yet is the emotional side of things. I can already hear people giggling, and I don't blame you. There's a reason we take the piss out of people who rage at video games. But let's be honest, if you're a competitive person and you actively try to win something only to come up short, it's natural to get frustrated. Doesn't matter what it is. I think getting over the anxiety and fear of that frustration and learning to perform in the moment when it's demanded of you is a valuable skill. And I can't think of anyone who embodies that skill more than the Beast. Daigo Umehara. In case you don't know, Daigo is arguably the most successful player in FGC history. He also wrote a book called The Will to Keep Winning. Daigo's stoic and lax personality is kind of a staple, so the title of the book surprised me when I first heard it. But once I read it, his personality and his success made a lot more sense. He talks about his sister being a genius and how this bred his philosophy of hard work topping natural talent. When he first started out, there were days he'd practice for almost every waking hour. This turned out to be counterproductive. Learning how to balance his will to win and his fear of failure was vital in his growth. I'm well aware this is starting to become less about FGC or real fighting and more of a general life lesson, so I'd recommend reading it for yourself. I don't want to give too much away. But the point is, the iconic calm under pressure Daigo was something that he forged through pro gaming, and something I know for a fact plenty of people, both on this stage and this stage, would benefit from. Whether it's a video game, a sport, a performance, whatever, performing at this kind of level in front of this many people is something most of us can only aspire to. In conclusion, there's a lot more in common than people think when it comes to virtual competition and real competition. To be the best at anything is going to take immense amounts of effort, personal growth, and passion. And maybe this is just my own ignorance, but I feel like there's a big disconnect between sporty types and gamer types. I'm not looking for a fucking Breakfast Club style bonding moment between the jocks and the nerds. I just wanted to point out that it might be worth picking up the gloves, or the controller, or both. There's probably a lot more fun and learning to be had than you might think. I also think it'd be really sick to see some kind of alternate version of chess boxing. Instead of beating the snot shit out of each other, then playing chess, you run the set, step into a ring. Absolute peak content right there. Anyway, thanks for watching and go pick a fight.